Just a little update following the trial on the weekend for the Warriors. Going to go through a bunch of those players there, and then we'll get into the video with Scoop and I. Just be aware, guys, that the volumes are still a little bit different with Scoop and myself. We're still trying to fix that up, and hopefully by the start of round one, we'll have that sorted. So thanks for bearing with that, and thanks to the guys that have been letting me know. I appreciate that feedback. Okay, the Warriors, guys. We had Mitch Barnett, who played in the middle in the prop role, and I can still see him averaging about that 45, so maybe a couple of points of value, but not someone I'm looking to target at this point. He does have the dual position, which is nice for sure. Current off the bench, hopefully, with him, we get to see him lose a fair bit of cash, and then we could pick him up at some point later in the season if there's an injury. But looks like Ford and also Nikola are ahead of him at the moment. Nikola will shift into the middle, and Curran will come onto that right edge. So good news for Ford at the moment. If he's named in that round one team list, I think we've got to have him in our side. Egan had a solid performance. He will be that up and down type of scorer as always. Jackson Ford, yeah, as I said, you've got to pick him up. I think if he makes that 17, priced at 24, I think he can average somewhere around that 34 pretty comfortably if he gets 50 plus minutes. We've seen his scores in the middle of the field. PPM's really good, so it's going to drop a little bit on the left, but I think he'll be fine. Shaun Johnson, for example, I don't think we're too worried about him. Had a really nice first half, got in the mid to high 20s, and then obviously not so great in the second half. So if they can keep games fairly close or they can win games, he will score 50, I'd say. And then there'll be games where he scores about the 30. So somewhere in that mid 40s for him, I still think is fine. I said 43 for his average. Tohu Harris, it looks like if he can get the 70 minutes, I can see him averaging that 50, 53, like I sort of mentioned. But if he happens to play 60, that's the worry. So I think we can watch him in the first few weeks and make our decision from there. He's not going to make too much cash anyway. You got guys a little bit lower. Tamati Martin didn't get to play. Yeah, had his first child, which is exciting for him. So he should be there in the 6th role. We have no Luke Metcalf anymore with his hamstring injury. So I think Tamati is going to be a solid option at 310. Not a home run, but a bit of a slow burn cash cow that you could play in your fullback position if you'd like to. Transical Cookstar, we had him as a pretty solid buy at 372k. Still think that he can average somewhere in the 30s. He did look really good. The second half, again, very similar to Shaun Johnson. The points dried up, ran a missed tackle or two, and yeah, things didn't go as planned for him, but I still think he's going to be fine. Again, if they can keep games close, if he can get a little bit of attacking stats, then I think he's going to get in that high 30s to 40, and then there'll be games where he gets in the low 20s. So if you're happy with that from around 1 or 2 perspective, then go with him. If not, you can go a little bit cheaper or go right up to a gun like Teddy or something like that. Nikola also was solid. Looks like he's going to, as I said, split that time between the edge and the middle. 533, just a little bit expensive to me, so I think you just got to hold off on him. And then Volkman, we'll pick him up, guys, if he does get that 6th role at some point. But a 319, we can let him go for now. And now we'll get over to that video with Scoop. Lockheed, who are you most excited about in this Warriors squad? It's our last of the previews for the preseason.
I like Charles Nickel-Klokstad. He's been brought from the Raiders for a reason, and that's to play fullback. I think he's a little bit discounted, even though he's been priced up to 26. He probably is over all of his neck worries and issues, and I think he'll go back to more meat eating and tackle breaking, even though the draw is pretty tough to start the year.
Yeah, I can agree with that. That's the big thing about his game, isn't it? It's very run, tackle break related. So bringing the ball out of trouble, taking on the line. So big question mark about this team is how they're going to go, right? Are we going to see them as a middling team? Are they going to be near the back end, close to the bottom 4? And obviously the amount of potential attacking options that he can provide and he can be served up with. So yeah, that range you've got him in there, that 32 to 38, that's 6 to 12 points of value, right? At the worst, you could see him averaging that 32, and at best somewhere around that 40, which is his career average at fullback. So very interesting. I'm very much hoping for the Warriors that they come out and have a banging start. But game against the Knights to kick things off is probably a good one for them to slowly work into the year. Although the Knights played incredible round 1 last year. You got Roosters, Cowboys next, Bulldogs, Sharks, which is actually really Bulldogs going to be improved. Sharks, I see them as a really strong top 4 team. So could be a tough one, but really there's going to be a lot of question marks. Let's go straight to Tamati Martin because I know you're interested in him as well. Price at 22, the 313, is he enough for your side with that dual position?
He's been in and out of my side a lot. I think he's just about the perfect 18th man for your bench. He's got a lot more base when he's at 5'8" than he was at fullback. Last year, he didn't score that well. A bit like the Rabbitohs fullback. Can't think of the name at the moment for some reason, but yeah, there we go. But he's definitely got more tackles and will have a little bit of kicking, even though he's next to Sean Johnson. He's got a career average around that low 30. So there's your 10 points. It's just that I do worry with that really rough start. Does he get much attack at all? I think he'll probably be about enough. I can find excuses to not have him in my team, but he's a very good option to buy.
Yeah, to play a wing fullback, right, which hasn't got a lot of terrific options. Definitely an option. He's not someone that I've been super keen on just because of all those super low scores. And do you even play him? That's the question mark as well. If you're 313, you kind of want to play him in your squad, right? The big thing with him at the moment is the fact that unfortunately Luke Metcalf has a hamstring injury, which could be anywhere between 6 and 8 weeks. So job security wise, Martin, it seems to be there. So really, I think he can warm into the season well. And if a lot of it is going to be based around his base stats, then that probably helps him out, right? If he can jag a little bit of attacking, then even better. He could probably get somewhere in the 30s. So I'm definitely not opposed to buying him. He's not in my team currently, but I can see why you would. Okay, we go to the top. We've got guys like Bunty Afoa and Tom Ale. Bunty, fairly expensive if we're looking at a middle forward there. Tom, obviously a fair bit cheaper. He looked really good on the weekend. Question mark for him there is, are the minutes available?
Yeah, well, with Barnett moving to the Warriors and him potentially moving into the middle a bit like he did at the Knights at the time, he's probably going to take away a little bit of that bench minutes. Jazz Tavanga injured to start the season might help LA out. I don't know if he's going to score mid-30s, though, which he needs to be 10 points of value.
Yeah. And you got Barnett, who's going to be middle guy this year. You've got guys like Josh Curran, who's currently off the bench. But we'll see how that shapes out in that trial that we would have just seen. And, Tohu Harris back. He's obviously back for a majority last year, but big minutes in there. There's just not much room for some of these bench guys. So I'd probably be really letting a lot of them go through to the keeper. We've seen how Warriors bench guys have kind of hurt us in the past as well. So let's avoid those guys. But Mitch Barnett, any value in him, or do we see him playing just a similar role to what he did at the Knights? Mainly through the middle, a bit on the edge. Definitely plays better on the edge, right?
Yeah, well, especially in terms of fantasy scoring, he can go 50 plus at the edge. But yeah, well, he's been termed one of the Bash brothers with Adam Fanua-Blake, and that says to me that he's going to play a fair bit of middle, which takes away some of the interest from him, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you got him in there when he plays under 60 minutes at lock, which is obviously middle. He's averaging 45. So maybe a few extra runs in the prop position, but really he's not going to play 60 minutes, right?
No, I doubt it. Unless he's playing a fair split at edge, he won't get that many minutes.
Yeah, so let's avoid him for now. I was interested in him earlier when we were thinking about getting him on the edge, but thankfully there's been a lot of information's been thrown around about him, so he's out of my side at the moment. Rocco Berry, I don't want to talk about him too much because he burnt me last year. Can't see him being an option at 370. Joshy Curran, if he's on the bench, we really want to see his price drop, and he could be an option at some point because he's a guy that can hit that 50 mark. We'd use him as sort of a mid-season cash cow, I'd imagine, with them having a buy in round 12. Really, if something happens to him, he loses a fair bit of cash over the first bunch of rounds as an injury. That's when I could see you picking him up there, round 5, 6, 7, or potentially sort of round 17, getting 4 or 5 good rounds out of him there. So not one we want to talk about. Wade Egan, just a little bit too hot and cold, not really a keeper hooker, right?
Yeah, he's a little bit like Verrills. He's not probably going to play 80 minutes unless Tavanga's injured and they haven't got Lussick on the bench. Yeah, he'll probably stay in that low 40s sort of bracket.
Yeah, and then we got Adam Fanua-Blake, him at that 43.6. Do you have him as a solid option or no?
Probably not. It was kind of unusual because we all pretty decently hot on him to begin last year. And he did a fantastic job at the Sea Eagles and had a fantastic PPM. But last year, he just didn't do what we were expecting. So if he can get back to it, sure, he could be some good value. But I really find it hard to place where he's going to be this year. I've had a range of 40 to 50, as you've got right next to him.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's someone that burnt TK at the start of the year too. And there was definitely some merit around it. Thankfully, that was one of the only picks of the season that I got right in my sense. Reed Marnie was not one of them, but anyway, we'll move on. Jackson Ford, he's someone that's of very big interest, actually. A 340, he's super cheap. And a price of 24 we've got him at. Yeah, you've had him there as down as like a bench role, which he's really come into contention for this starting role. We really have to see how he plays this week, right? And if, obviously, round 1 teams is going to determine what's going to happen with him, yeah?
Yeah, well, the Warriors play around with their bench middles and their bench forwards a little bit. I was surprised to see Curran there and Ford starting. If Ford does start and get a solid slice of minutes at 340k, he's really somebody you might have a look at and solve a few of those issues for those cheap middles down in that lower price bracket. I do want to see this week's trials. It'll be very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to go straight to Sean Johnson way there. You've got him as a trials watch. Do you have him as highly valued as a bunch of people that talking to me about him do?
I have him probably 6 to 8 points undervalued, but not 10. I think the Warriors draw hurts him too much. He won't get enough attack. Like, he does get goals from Reece Walsh leaving and he does get more kick meters, but does that goals actually mean much? The Warriors might only give him 2 goal kicks a game if they're really being hurt early on.
I really hope they play well.
Me too, hey.
Yeah, good for the game. It'd be good to have them back at home all year too, which I think definitely improves their chances of having some higher scoring games, because that's what these type of players want, right? Johnson, Tamati, Chancellor Kluxar, these types of guys, we want them in higher scoring games rather than those arm wrestle games. Yeah, Johnson's going to get some kick meters, but with that, divided by 3 instead of divide 2, doesn't help him as much, right? Those big kick meters. So Johnson, I have him 4 points undervalued. So somewhere in that mid-40s is okay, but is it enough? Because he's not going to be a keeper, right? Tohu Harris, big question marks around him. 687 is the price. I definitely have some interest in him for sure. Second year post ACL surgery. Can he get back into the sort of low to mid-50s?
Yeah, I think he can get towards mid-50s. It's just where he stops, because his age is starting to become a factor. I think his points per minute will go up and his work rate will go up a fair bit this year. Maybe not to 2020 levels, but up a lot. But will he stay at that over 70 minutes? I initially had him, yes, but I'm starting to wonder a little bit and sort of sliding back from that 56 average to maybe closer to sort of 54, 55 type, which is still keeper and non-origin, almost a non-origin gun, but not as appealing as I initially was reading him.
Yeah, if you are going with him, I think you need to keep him at least all the way to 16, right? Round 12 is not going to hurt you too much, and then you've got him for that, crucial round 13 by 14, 15, and then you could make your decision from there. So really, you get a guy that's going to miss 1 game in the first 15, and not a super important round that he does miss. So yeah, even if it is like a few points of value, you've got someone that goes up a little bit in price. He's going to be there each and every week, pretty consistent. So I could see why people will pick him. At the moment, he's not in my team, but I definitely have some interest. Tohu Harris, good times. I remember the good years. He averaged 60 2 years ago. So
well over 60. It was really, really good. And that's why we're kind of interested in him if he can get back to something like that. I don't think he will, but I think he'll be a lot better than last year.
Definitely. Then we move to... We spoke about Tomato. We got Luke Metcalf. We'll wait for him. He could potentially be an option at some point. We spoke about Chance. The big one next is Martin Nikola. 533. I'm just so sad that he's gone. He went up so much. 4.5 points there. It's just ridiculous there. Looks like he's going to be getting some big minutes, mainly on the edge, right?
Yeah, well, he was getting that sort of mid-40s when he was starting at edge at Parramatta. But yeah, now mid-40s might not be enough. Before priced at 33, that would have been a good cash cow, especially potentially with a lot of tackling in the Warriors' hard start. But now priced at 37, you really need him to absolutely explode to be value. So I probably am not going to go near him this year now.
It's just hard. He seems like one of those guys you could probably bank on being a mainstay in this forward pack. He's that type of player that you can trust, but still scary, right? Just too awkwardly priced. And there's so many other guys, the Egan Butchers of the world, that are similar price to that. Teague Wilton, these types of players that have probably more of a clearer role and probably a bit more upside, right? We don't see Nikola having 50 plus upside. Would you agree?
No, not quite that high. I could see mid-40s, but definitely not 50.
Yeah, so you're banking on it. There's a good chance he just scores the same and doesn't really help you. And then probably a little bit upside, which is not worth it. So Jazz Tavunga's out. He seems to become an option at some point of the year. So let's see that happen again. We've got Vitalea, who a few people are talking about him coming off a bad season fantasy-wise for anyone who had him. A lot of people held him the whole year and didn't score at all for you, and really he was just a loop guy. At 340, you want him at minimum 250 to even be a thought, but he will have some natural improvement, right?
Yeah, he'll definitely have improvement, but when you score a try and end up on 13 points 2 weeks in a row, it's not somebody that you want for fantasy. You have to average like a hat trick a week to be a certainty to make you any cash.
Yeah, for sure. Volkman comes in a little bit more calculation if there is an injury early on, because we see Metcalf out. So think about him if something comes up, but at the moment he's someone that has scored 35 and priced at 22. So potential later down the track. Dylan Walker, he's going to have the same role he did at Manly, probably score that mid-30s again, so let's avoid him. And then it's Tindy Zalesniak and Braden Williami to round it out. Both not real interesting buys, are they?
No, Williami's got a little bit more. I mean, if he does nab one of the centre spots, which is a possibility, I don't think it'll happen. He is a bit cheaper than Vialea. But yeah, you really want to go to those 250 guys like Talau, Alamotti, Smith Shields, and that extra 60, 70k probably could go to good use somewhere else in your team.
Definitely. That is the Warriors squad. You got any more thoughts?
Yeah, well, that's all the team's done. I really hope they at least jag 2 or 3 wins in that first rough period so that they can nose their way up from that point in the season. And moving on to draw analysis and Origin analysis next week.
What are we looking to expect from those videos, Lock?
I'm going to go through how to plan around the buys, when to sell cash cows for some of those earlier buys, like maybe the Titans or the Tigers, and which teams are most affected by Origin. So some teams have that round 13 and round 17 buys you've seen, and that's actually bad for guys who don't play Origin and good for guys like Cleary, who aren't going to miss those many extra weeks. In fact, the Panthers and a couple of other teams only missed maybe 1 game extra. So it's really important to know which Origin guns are sells and which ones can actually be holds.
Good. That'll be fun. Can't wait for that. It's going to be just before team list, guys. Probably, late next week or across the weekend. So that'll be really cool. Can't wait for that one. Plenty of information that Lockheed's churned together in this spreadsheet there, which I'll give you a quick throw around here. Draws by Origin. Look at that thing, is crazy. So we'll talk through that next week. Plenty going on, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. Catch you in the next one.